Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is February 5th at 10:26. Hope everyone's doing good. Had a few days. Well, I've been in this habit of recording videos and then setting them up as premieres, just to kind of break up the whole thing. And I was kind of I had a few days or a few mornings where I was kind of busy and I wasn't able to really do a video. So it's nice to be back. It was about 3 days or so where I wasn't able to do. But again, I want to thank everybody. Been getting a lot of new comments and some new subscribers. So really appreciate the recommendations that people have been making and all those things. So yeah, and it's here we are. It is Thursday. Is it Thursday? It is Thursday. Hard to believe. We're into the first week of February 2026. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, I had been doing. I still have a lot more videos to go, but I about a couple weeks ago my TV broke and I got a new TV, so I'm back in action, back at it again as far as being able to just watch movies. But during that time, when that tragic episode, the tragedy happened, I discovered a really great YouTube channel. So the Film Crypt. It's a YouTube channel where there's a ton of exploitation movies, mostly all horror films. 70s, lots of 70s, a lot of 80s movies, mostly 80s, but amazing films. There was a few that I had seen, and then there's a few, maybe a handful that I had seen, but then also a handful that I own. But most of the movies were all new for me, so just amazing. So in that time, without having a real television, I was watching a shit ton of new movies. So I acquired this like giant list of films. I got through the first half of it a few days ago, and I still have another big list to go. And it's been awesome. What a great, fantastic resource. I have a whole nother list here of movies that I'm gonna eventually get back to covering. These were all movies that I saw for the very first time. Had never seen any of these movies before, nor had I even heard of them, with the exception of, I think the one movie on here that I had seen uh, definitely more than once was Children of the Corn. But other than that, it's a pretty big list here of all these films. So I'm going to eventually do shows for all these movies. Really, really great. One, Handra was one that really stuck out. Ghostwatch. There's some good shit on here. So I'm excited about talking about that next batch of movies. But what a really great resource to see new movies. So two movies, I ended up getting a gift card for from Santa Claus this year. So I ended up ordering a couple of the movies that I saw that I absolutely fell in love with. They might be my two favorite movies, but it's hard to say. They're both very different, but I bought both of these on Blu-ray and just amazing. And today I got two of them, and they came in the mail last week, and I just finished watching this one, which is, I think it's, for me, it's a masterpiece, and that is Frankenstein: A True Story. I discovered this movie. I Again, when I watched it on the Film Crypt, watching on YouTube, I there were times. It's a 4 hour movie. It's actually a TV movie. It's a British movie that came out in '73, and I there when I watched it the other night last week on YouTube on the Film Crypt page. The other thing that's really cool about the Film Crypt page is that all of the movies, as far as I know, the transfers are pretty good. There's no commercials, there's no interruptions. they're unedited as far as I know too. So sometimes around YouTube rules or standards, there is a that you have to be careful as far as violence or things that you say or images that are shown. It is a pretty policed area, but for the most part, all of these movies have they're not edited, so it's pretty awesome. The transfers are pretty good, but I discovered, and again, I watched this last week, and there were times where I thought I probably did see this as a kid, like on cable, because this was a TV movie, and it was. There were times watching the movie where I was like, "Wait, I think I did. I probably have seen this because it came out in the '70s, '73, and I believe it was in syndication for a while, and I probably did see it. But again, watching it on the Film Crypt page was really the first time. I mean, it was, if I had seen it, it had been like 2,000 years since I'd seen it. So it was an entirely new and different experience. That being said, and again, I was blown away by it. I did a show on Frankenstein, a True Story, probably last week. But I went out and I bought it on Blu-ray, and this was put out by, was it Shout Factory, I believe? I think it is Shout Factory. Yeah, Shout Factory. But, wow, unbelievable. The transfer of this is absolutely insane. And the quality of this, it was one of those, again, I always feel this way, but a lot of times, and I say it all the time, and then I guess I'm kind of a hypocrite because I found myself watching movies online, but it was really because I had a necessity. Um, but man, the quality in comparison to watching it online to actually owning the physical media version of that film, I mean, it's not. It's literally. It's beyond night and day. And then I watched another movie that I ordered, which I'm gonna talk about in a different show, which I think is a total masterpiece as well, and that is Microwave Massacre. And I'm gonna do a separate show on this this week. But watching this movie, Frankenstein: A True Story, again, I was just like, why do I watch anything online? Because I'm like, even though, that being said, even though the quality, again, it was a series of circumstances because my TV broke and now I got fixed. And then I use YouTube. As far as social media stuff goes, I don't really use Facebook or Instagram that much. I use it for, I mean, I use Messenger, to communicate with people. And I use Facebook and Instagram for, promoting shows, gigs. And as a fan of going to see live music, it's kind of the only way I hear about shows. But other than that, I try to stay away from it because it's fucking cesspool. So, YouTube is kind of the same thing. I notice it more and more. It's getting worse as far as all of this garbage that's coming up and just really this divisive shit that comes up. And it's pretty awful. So it's not really any different. But I think, you know, as far as if you want to learn about something or maybe, I don't know, from an entertainment purpose or for entertainment purposes or even education, I love interviews. I love finding out about, how something works, is in this case a movie. So I love podcasts. So, it's a balance. So I'm on YouTube a lot. And so I just happened to discover the Film Crypt at the same time that my TV broke. And again, I've said this many times. I don't really like to stream movies. I don't stream at home. And it's all because of the quality of movies, the quality of the transfer, or the technology that's used to stream these movies. There's lots of compression on the audio, and I just feel like, you're like getting half the show, half the experience. But that being said, I do think the quality of the movies, the transfer, however the movies were transferred or downloaded to this page, the film crypt, is pretty good. It's like, I'd say it's at, mid range DVD to maybe higher end DVD quality. Some of the movies look really, really good. There were one or two. There was one Lucio Fulci movie that I watched that I almost didn't get through because the quality was so bad, that I had never seen before. But I really love the movie, and Lucio Fulci is like my favorite, pretty much my favorite horror director. So I watched it, Conquest, which I had never seen. So I pushed through it, and it was great, but the quality was really shitty. Other than that, the quality was pretty good. The quality for watching this on Film Crypt was really good. But again, after watching this in this absolutely pristine transfer, I was like, man, why do I do it? Like, it's so funny. It's a weird thing. I mean, literally night and day difference. The audio, the picture, the clarity. I mean, unbelievable. And I really feel that I'm so excited that I got this movie, and watching it again just made me even a bigger fan. I think this movie for me is the greatest. It's my favorite version of the classic story of Frankenstein. I really do. I think it's like twofold. It's very close. I think there's a lot of great things that it took from Mary Shelley's book, but then I also feel there is some real interesting areas that they explored in this movie that are not in the book, and it's a really great balance. A really great balance. Transferring. When a movie is adapted from a book or a novel, it's really tricky, and I mean, shit, like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is like one of the most iconic books ever written, and it's a household name. Everybody, you'll never run into somebody who is not familiar with at least the character of Frankenstein, and they're like, Frankenstein who? What does that mean? It's such a part of our like literary uh, DNA, if you will, and especially if you're a fan of horror. Um, and I'm a huge fan of the book. I love Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I've read it quite a few times. I read it every few years. It's one of those books I reread. I go back to. My favorite books, and my favorite book of all time is Dune. That's a book I read every few years. I really love that book so much, and I revisit that book every few years. And then I also am a huge fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I always read that. I read that last year again for the I don't know how many times. I love, and this is mostly in the horror genre. I'm Edgar Allan Poe is probably my favorite. I love Lovecraft. So many great things. There's some Stephen King books I really really love. So, and when you're adapting a story from a classic or well-known novel, even if say the story isn't so good, or maybe I shouldn't say isn't so good, but like if the novel isn't so good, like a household name or so well-known, so iconic, like say Bram Stoker, or names like Bram Stoker or Mary Shelley, it's still a tricky thing. And I try movies that I really love. I try to check out the books of those movies because I don't know. It's interesting. I have gotten a very different perspective sometimes watching the movie, but I like when I typically go for stories and movies of where It's all new. It's not based on anything. But hey, if it's a good movie, it's a good movie. But I really feel like this is a great balance the way this was adapted from the classic novel, but then it goes into some very interesting and new territories. It does tie in the Bride of Frankenstein, which is really great. It gets really into kind of the tragic or um, you know where the monster realizes like what he is. It goes into that pretty heavily, which is really cool. It's great. I think, and I'm a massive fan of period piece movies. I love movies that have such a thrilling kind of attention to detail. Like if it's set in a specific time period or a world, I'm a sucker for that. I absolutely love that. And this movie has such a such a richness to it, and the design is absolutely amazing. The costuming, the the sets are just so great, and I'm always like kind of dumbfounded when I think of when this was shot 70, 73, 72 was shot and it was released on television on 73. And when I think of this was decades before CGI or blue screen. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I do think there are good examples of there's where there is a balance at times. I think Robert Eggers did that exceptionally well with Nosferatu. I think Peter Jackson did it really, really well with the first three Lord of the Rings movies. But um, but a lot of the times it's too obvious when there's blue screen. It feels, it doesn't feel organic. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which I did see last year now. I saw it on Halloween weekend. It was a limited release in the screen on the big screen, and then I went right to Netflix. It's a Netflix original or a Netflix production, and it is good. It is really good. But again, there's something about this movie that I just find more comforting, more engaging, and it's and to compare them. I mean, about as they're really really different. I mean, there's a lot of similarities because Guillermo does take a lot of liberties with the story, but it is pretty close to the novel. And this movie does too as well, but it goes into very different directions, and so does Guillermo del Toro's. But there's something about this in camera, everything is real that you see. That to me, it just gives it a different experience, and it's got the certain tangibility to it. I don't know. And and the other thing too. Sometimes I think when there is restraint, and in this case, a television movie, as far as like say the gore or violence, I think sometimes that can make the movie even better. And it might sound odd saying that, but sometimes with that direction, I think in the television world there are some great, fantastic movies. Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, Duel, and Tourist Trap, which wasn't made for television, but it got put into syndication because of it wasn't excessively gory. And but those movies are so great because they they don't really show any gore, but they push it as far as they can. They have these restrictions because they can't get an R rating, obviously, and but it just enhances the atmosphere, the suspense. So it's an interesting thing, and this is coming from someone that loves, I love, super gory films and really sleazy films. So, but it is all it's all about the story, about the context of what the movie is. I do believe a lot of the times in that idea of like less is more. I think when you are when there is a little bit of restraint on certain things, it can be even more stimulating and exciting in a lot of ways. I do love it when it's all, balls deep, but there's something to be said about that with there is a restraint. It does, when movies have that, it does leave quite a bit. It probably leaves a little bit more room for um, the audience or the audience members for the use of their imagination, which is really really powerful. Sometimes that is really forsaken, I think. And there's so many, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the information about Frankenstein, especially the cast and obviously my thoughts about the movie, I've talked about or shared before. But watching it again, I've said this many times, but watching it in this way, now that I own it, a physical media version of it, and watching it on Blu-ray, it literally was like watching it for the first time. And it says it's for me, it just really exemplifies why I love physical media. And I know people like, I have a good friend that does not really collect media, physical media, because of doesn't have the room, and I get that. So there's reasons for that, and to acquire more and more stuff, but there's something, I don't know, when I fall in love with a movie or I find a movie that I really like, my natural kind of desire, I feel like I like to see it again, and but when I actually purchase it or own it and I have it in my like collection or my library, that's a really great feeling, and I know that I can always access that. When I'm into a movie and I just don't own it or I don't have it, it's just not the same kind of connection. So and this is just another example of why I just absolutely love physical media, and I don't see it going away. I don't, not at this point. I mean, I think there's enough freaks like me out there, and people who you know who have my kind of desires as far as around how I see films or listen to music. The same thing with books or whatever. That I will always seek those things out. The one thing that's changed for me as far as physical media goes a little bit, uh, I've kind of switched over to audiobooks just because I find it a little bit easier, which is a whole nother story. Even though I love to read, and I read every day. I try to read every day, but I find like it's a lot of an easier way. So I don't really buy books anymore. I do have a shit ton of books, and every now and then I will buy them. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So, but the cast for Frankenstein: A True Story again is just absolutely exceptional. I mean, James Mason, amazing, incredible, such an iconic actor. Leonard Whiting, David McCollum. The cast is just absolutely amazing. The stunning Jane Seymour, um, Viola Paget, and Michael Sarrazin as the monster. Unbelievable. The cast is absolutely like top notch. Just a totally stacked cast in every way. I mean, it's so damn good. It's so damn good. It doesn't get any better than this. And there's a certain there's again, this movie is a gothic horror story, and it is very dark. Um, Going back to the television kind of thing is, this is a made for television movie, so it's not rated R. So there's, there is some kind of limitations as far as like Guillermo del Toro's movie. It's rated R, and it's pretty dark, and there is a lot of gore. There's some very gory scenes in that movie, which I really liked. And obviously, they can't do that. They weren't able to do that for made for TV time back in the 70s. So there isn't that kind of thing, but they really go into other areas that make it just as dark, if in comparison. And it's great. It really does, for the restraints. It makes the film even more enjoyable. It's got that kind of classic gothic horror vibe. It is. I love that the story is the script for this movie. It's 4 hours. I forgot watching this the other night. I started it kind of late. Well, no, I didn't actually. I started when I finally sat down. I had it for. I had Frankenstein, the true story. I had it on Blu-ray for about a week. I had to wait to get the TV situation taken care of, so I wasn't able to watch it. I was sitting on it for a week, kind of chomping at the bit. And then, finally got a chance to watch it. And so automatically, it was just so damn good, just so damn good. But it really does have that classic gothic tale, gothic essence, and but there's something about um, the writing for this movie that makes it so good. I've talked about this before. I have recommended for whatever my opinion's worth, which, it is what it is. I have recommended. I was really glad that I got to see Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein on the big screen. It's meant to be seen on it, and I got to see it at the Strand, and it was super super cool. It was a cool experience. It was great seeing it on Halloween. There was a lot of people there, and then it was only in theaters for a week, 2 weeks, I think, and then it went straight to streaming, which is so stupid. But anyway, um, and to me, there's such a difference in the way the script is compared to that movie, Guillermo del Toro's version, and and then this TV movie. Um, this story has a certain elegance to it. It is really well fleshed out. All the characters are great, and you're just brought into this really great classic gothic tale, and you are a part of it. You care about what's happening. You care about the characters. You're shocked by things that happen. Whereas, like the Guillermo del Toro movie has moments of where the writing is so great, but there's also this big problem that hinders that movie, which I think it's really good, and I have recommended, but I don't think it's as good as Pan's Labyrinth. The problem with that movie is there is some dialogue in the movie that is so, well, I don't know how else to put it, but just really cheesy, but cheesy in a bad way, where it's almost like kind of cringy of like, oh man, like is that really what they decided, what they how they decided to express this particular area of the story, because it's so like ham-handed and so on the nose. And there's this thing with the movie where it feels like your hand is being held from the beginning to throughout the whole movie of like how you should feel, where you're going. Everything is so overtly explained. There's no room, where you can just ingest the information and kind of make up your own mind as to what's happening, and let the story resonate. instead of being told, oh, this is, where you should feel concerned or frightened or have empathy or this, it has this hand holding thing throughout the movie, which I didn't like at all. But with that, there is some dialogue in the movie that is just great. With this movie, Frankenstein: A True Story, it's just so well done. I mean, it's just it's the everything is so fleshed out. You're pulled into the story. It's fantastic. There is also, again, the other thing that is such a bonus for me, and why I buy Blu-rays, is the special features aspect. The special features on here are super awesome, really really cool. I learned some real interesting things about this movie that I was blown away by. Um, just absolutely fantastic. And there's a really great interview with Jane Seymour on here that is amazing. And I pretty much fell out of my couch because of how gorgeous she still looks. Considering, I mean, um, she's in her 70s and she looks like, I mean, such a babe. But she's awesome. Iconic actress, been in so many movies, television shows, I mean, you name it. Kind of a household name. But there's a really good interview with her in the movie that, in the special features, that is just terrific. Again, that's something you cannot get at all watching stuff online. Even if you, as far as I know, I don't think you can. Even if you do order or buy a movie, where you're, goes to your account or whatever, where you download the movie, whether you're getting it, whatever streaming platform you're using it, and you're not getting a physical media version of that film, but if you're downloading it, you don't get to have access to special features. Like for me, if I really love a movie, I love to find out, how did they do it? How did this whole thing come together? What was the seed? The first seed that was planted. And just, I love seeing interviews with the directors, the actors, especially when it comes to the director, because they'll talk about, which I look forward to a lot. And a lot of the times it's the case. They'll talk about their influences, what kind of inspired them, and all those things. And I love that. I'm all about that. And the special features component on here is just awesome. And that's something you're not going to get from downloading a movie from, I don't know, Hulu or Netflix or whatever. And you don't own it. You don't own the artwork. There's something, the tactile thing is gone. So it's not part of the experience. And if I want to watch this, I can just take it off my shelf and pop it in, and that's it. So, and then just the quality is so much better. I mean, it totally eclipses even these really good versions that I saw of these films, and this film in particular, on the film crypt page. So, it's wild. It's wild. The there's the best part of this Blu-ray is there's an interview with one of the writers, Don Biccardi, who was one of the co-writers for this movie, and it's an extraordinary interview. It's like a 35-minute interview, but he goes into such detail. I think he's like in his 80s or 90s now. Um, but it's so interesting because they go into such detail um, of the long process that this movie went through, and a lot of it went. I mean, it was there was so many roadblocks with the making of this movie, which I did not know about. Originally, the original intention with this movie wasn't for it not to be a TV movie at all. And the interview is absolutely fabulous with Don Biccardi. It's so interesting. Jack Smite directed the movie. Um, in this interview with Don Bacardi, he talks a lot about, he wrote the story and co-wrote the story, and he goes into such detail with working with the producer of this film, who was going to finance this whole movie, um, Hunt Stromberg Jr. and Ian Lewis, and it was directed by Jack Smite. Originally, when this movie was kind of green lighted, this idea, um, they had proposed Jack Bacardi or Bacardi had Don Bacardi had they had been pushing to get big directors, like big Hollywood directors. They, which I didn't know. Originally, they set out for this movie to be a big Hollywood film with a big budget, and it was going to get a regular theatrical release. And originally, they were in talks with directors like John Borman. He had just come off of directing Deliverance. John Borman's an amazing director, and then the other director they had on board as a possibility was Francis Ford Coppola, which is insane because he had just come off of, um, I think it was Apocalypse Now, or no, The Godfather. So just insane. But the producers of the film, Hunt Hunt Stromberg Jr. and Ian Lewis, were not really into the idea of working with these directors because they felt like they would kind of lose control over the production, lose control over the finances. They were really against having Francis Ford Coppola as the director because of his reputation on The Godfather, where he did go over budget quite a bit, and his conflicts with the studio. So they were really against that. Really interesting. I had no idea. And they were also very controlling of the project. They really wanted it to be more in house, where they would have control. They didn't want to work with a big time director. Really wild. I had no idea. They also had massive actors attached to it that were going to possibly be pulled into the movie. I mean, they had Marlon Brando at one point was in talks of being in the movie. Just crazy. And all of this strife went on, I guess, for a long time, and they finally made some kind of agreement, and it was going to be part of the Universal Television, or Universal Pictures television series in the UK, and so they had to change and keep it all in house, and Jack Smite took over became the director, and it was essentially made into a TV movie, and it went from possibly having legends, Francis Ford Coppola, or John Borman, which is crazy. I didn't know that, to where it became this relatively smaller television movie. And Don Bacardi was like, even in this interview, and this interview was done not that long ago, does not really like the movie. It was interesting. He doesn't really like this version of the film. He thinks the story is still good and there's aspects of it, but he still feels like it could have been something more. Could have been something much bigger and more grand. And his whole view of the whole story is really interesting, of this movie. He's not a fan of it, and he was talking about that pretty openly. The journey that this movie went on, the journey that he went on to write this movie, and then to see it kind of go totally in this different direction. Really interesting. And the guy who was doing the interview says that, well, this is like my favorite. Don't. He more or less is like saying to Don Bacardi, you should give it a little bit more credit for what it is. Like he felt like this movie is a masterpiece, and it's still, even though it went from this higher echelon thing in Hollywood to more of to a TV movie. It's still an incredible film, and he felt like this is like still a masterpiece. It was really interesting hearing them talk about those things back and forth. Again, that's the um, that's the thing that I love so much about the special features component on these movies. It's an extraordinary um, way of learning about something that you really love, and I had no idea of any of those things. And it was funny. I was watching it when I was watching it the other night. I started it around 8 o'clock, 8:30 or something, and I had thought, I don't know why I thought this movie's like closer to 3 hours. But then I realized, oh wait, it's 4 hours, and I'm like, oh wait, it's still on. But man, it doesn't drag. You can watch it in one sitting. It's an extraordinary movie. It is my favorite version of Frankenstein to me. There's a lot of great Frankenstein films out there. I love the Hammer films. I love you know, all of that shit too. But this is so great. Classic '70s, all the way. It's absolutely incredible. The cast is amazing. Can't recommend it enough. And seeing it this way is the way. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.